No one warned us about this part of aging. Did anyone ever tell you that life after 80 could feel like being caught in a wave you didn't see coming? You may have prepared for the wrinkles, the slower mornings, or even the medical checkups, but not for this part. The quiet surprises, the unexpected emotions, the way the world begins to move at a pace that no longer feels like yours. Even the strongest, most independent people, those who have spent a lifetime taking care of themselves and others, can feel blindsided by how aging actually unfolds, not just in the body, but in the heart and mind. These later years come with a strange mix of gratitude and grief, of light and loss. You may look around and realize that while the world is still spinning, the rhythm of your own life has changed in ways you never imagined. It's not all sadness, of course. There's beauty here too, in the stillness, the wisdom, the deepened appreciation for the simplest things. But it's also true that aging brings challenges no one really talks about. Not the kind that show up on medical reports, but the quiet, invisible shifts. How others begin to treat you differently, how time feels both slower and shorter, and how even your own body sometimes feels like a stranger. These realities can be disorienting. They can make you question your place in a world that once seemed to need you every day. And yet, buried inside these moments is something powerful, a chance to see life through clearer eyes. When we start naming what we're feeling, the loneliness, the frustration, the uncertainty, something remarkable happens. We begin to feel less alone. This article isn't about loss. It's about recognition, about naming what so many experience quietly, behind closed doors. Because once you see these truths for what they are, they lose their sting. You begin to realize that every season of life, even the ones that test us most, carries its own form of strength. So let's walk through these 5 realities together, not as obstacles to fear, but as parts of a journey still unfolding. Because the truth is, aging doesn't end your story. It simply gives you a new way to tell it. 1. When the world grows quiet, the shrinking circle of connection. There comes a time in life, often sometime after 80, when you begin to notice the quiet first. It doesn't arrive all at once, the way a storm sweeps in, but slowly, softly, the way dusk fades into night. One morning, you realize the phone hasn't rung in a while. The usual visits seem to have spaced out. The hum of daily chatter has dimmed into something gentler, less predictable. At first, you tell yourself that everyone is just busy. After all, that's life. People grow, move, change, get caught up in their own world. But as weeks turn into months, you start to feel it. The space between conversations has stretched, and the laughter that once filled your home now lingers only in memory. It's a strange kind of silence, not empty, not hostile, but heavy with the weight of what used to be. You still have people who care, perhaps children who check in, a neighbor who waves from across the yard, or a friend who sends the occasional note. But the easy rhythm of connection, that simple, natural closeness that once came without effort, feels different now. Friends who once dropped by with no warning now call to schedule a visit weeks ahead. Some have moved away to be closer to their children. Others have slowed down or slipped quietly into the next world. With every goodbye, the circle grows smaller and the echoes grow fainter. The quiet that fills the space afterward is not just an absence of noise. It's a reminder of how much you've lived and how much you miss the people who once stood beside you. It's not always loneliness in the traditional sense. Often, it's something softer, deeper, the awareness of absence, the subtle ache of no longer being needed in the same way. You miss the feeling of being woven into other people's lives, the small, daily exchanges that once made you feel part of the flow. You miss being called for advice, being asked for help, being part of plans that stretched beyond your front door. And when those calls stop coming as often, even the most independent spirit can start to wonder quietly, do I still matter the way I once did? This shrinking social world isn't a personal failure. It's something nearly everyone faces eventually. Though few people talk about it out loud, life has a way of gently, almost imperceptibly, pulling people apart. Children grow older, grandchildren scatter to cities and countries you've never seen. Friends age at different paces, some retreat into their own rhythms, others disappear altogether. Time, in its quiet but relentless way, reshapes the landscape of your relationships until what's left looks very different from what you once knew. When conversations become rare, memory becomes your most loyal companion. You find yourself revisiting the past, not because you're stuck there, but because it's where so much of your love still lives. You remember faces, laughter, the warmth of hands held, the comfort of familiar voices. The people who filled your world may no longer sit beside you, but they remain woven into who you are. Every memory, a shared meal, a silly joke, a long-forgotten trip, becomes a small treasure you carry forward. Remembering them isn't clinging, it's honoring. It's saying, "You mattered to me, you still do." As you age, the shape of friendship changes too. It's no longer measured by how often you see someone, but by how deeply you connect when you do. A single heartfelt conversation can mean more now than a dozen small ones ever did. The neighbor who checks in, the nurse who takes time to chat, the relative who remembers your birthday. These small gestures begin to shine brighter, like stars appearing in a darkening sky. Even one or two true, steady connections can hold immense comfort. They remind you that being seen, even by a few, is enough. Sometimes those connections even come from unexpected places. A new friend met online, a fellow senior at a community center, or a younger person drawn to your warmth and wisdom. And maybe that's one of the quiet lessons of this stage of life. Connection doesn't always need to look the way it once did. The form changes, but the meaning remains. Belonging can be rebuilt in new, smaller ways. Through writing letters, joining a local group, volunteering, or even exchanging smiles with a stranger at the market. Technology, for all its challenges, can also be a bridge. Video calls that bring loved ones' faces back into view, online spaces where stories and laughter are shared among people who've never met in person but understand one another completely. The trick isn't to chase what used to be, but to allow connection to evolve with you. The world may have changed, but your ability to give love, to listen, to care, that's timeless. And in the quiet moments, something unexpected happens. You start to realize that silence isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's an invitation, a space where you can rest, think, and rediscover yourself. There is a kind of peace that comes from slowing down, from no longer having to fill every hour or every conversation. You begin to notice the simple joys that were once hidden beneath the noise. The morning light warming the floor, the way the wind carries the scent of rain, the sound of a bird singing just outside your window. These moments are small, but they're pure. They remind you that life still hums softly all around you, quieter, yes, but no less alive. The key is to keep your heart open. Stay curious about people, about the world, about what's still possible. Make that call, write that note, smile at that passerby. Tell your stories, even when you think no one's listening, because your voice carries wisdom that someone, somewhere, needs to hear. The world still needs your tenderness, your perspective, your humor. It might not always show it, but that doesn't make it any less true. When the world grows quiet, it's easy to think you've been left behind. But in truth, you've simply reached a different part of the song, the slower, softer verse that gives the melody meaning. Your circle may have grown smaller, but its depth has grown greater. Within that smaller circle lies peace, gratitude, and the quiet strength of a life that has loved deeply and continues to do so. So, the next time you sit in that familiar chair, surrounded by memories that whisper softly around you, remember, the silence you hear isn't emptiness. It's the sound of a life still unfolding, slower perhaps, but full of meaning, full of grace, full of the love that endures long after the noise fades. 2. When small things become big battles, the body's new rules. There's a moment in later life when you realize the body you've lived in for decades no longer plays by the same rule. It used to be reliable, strong enough to lift, quick enough to recover, resilient enough to handle whatever came your way. A scraped knee, a missed meal, a sleepless night. These things once barely registered. You'd brush them off, laugh about them, and move on without a second thought. But somewhere after 80, the balance quietly shifts. What was once a small inconvenience now takes longer to mend. A minor cold lingers for weeks, a bruise darkens and refuses to fade. You twist your ankle slightly, and suddenly you're nursing it for a month. The body, Once your quiet partner in everything begins demanding attention, patience, and care you never used to think about. At first, this change feels like an insult. After all, you've taken care of yourself. You've been strong, capable, independent, the one others turned to when things went wrong. And now, here it is, a body that complains more, moves slower, and sometimes seems to have a mind of its own. You wake up with a stiffness you can't explain. You drop things you meant to hold tightly. You tire after doing something that used to barely count as effort. These moments might seem small, but together they form a truth that's hard to face. Your body is no longer the same. It's still yours, but it's changed, and it's asking you to change with it. The hardest part of this realization isn't physical, it's emotional. There's a kind of grief that comes when you realize the vessel that carried you through so many decades, that walked you through work and weddings, that held babies and carried groceries and climbed stairs, now needs gentler handling. You find yourself negotiating with it like an old friend who's grown moody and unpredictable. Just one more walk. You tell your knees, "Please don't ache today." You whisper to your back. Some days it listens, and some days it doesn't. And the unpredictability of it all, the not knowing whether your energy will hold or whether you'll feel steady on your feet, can make even ordinary days feel like small acts of courage. What makes this change even harder is how quietly it happens. No one sits you down to explain that after 80, recovery slows down, that your immune system won't bounce back as quickly, that a skipped meal or a restless night can throw everything out of rhythm. Even your doctor may shrug and call it just aging, as if that explanation makes it any easier to accept. But you notice the difference. You feel it deeply, in the way fatigue lingers longer, in the way pain takes its time leaving, in the way a single fall can shake your confidence for months. These aren't small things. They are the body's way of saying, "You've carried me far. Now, let's move slower together." There's a kind of frustration that builds when your will remains strong, but your body doesn't follow suit. You still think young. You still plan as though your body can do what it did before. And when it can't, you feel betrayed, as if your own reflection has broken a promise. This sense of betrayal can lead to guilt or denial. You push harder than you should, ignore the signals, or scold yourself for not being what you once were. But beneath that frustration lies a hidden truth. Awareness is a form of strength. When you start to listen to what your body is saying instead of fighting it, you begin to work with it again, not against it. Adapting doesn't mean giving up. It means honoring the body that has served you all these years. It means trading pride for wisdom, choosing rest over exhaustion, stretching before standing, keeping water close, pacing your days instead of rushing through them. It means learning the small rituals that protect you, sitting down to put on socks, taking breaks during chores, planning outings with recovery time built in. These small acts of mindfulness aren't signs of weakness. They are signs of care, quiet ways of saying, "I'm still here, and I want to keep being here." And we have done company. And fast of the 40 subleches wis. There's also a deeper emotional journey hidden inside this physical one, a shift from fighting the body to befriending it. For many who've lived active, capable lives, slowing down can feel like losing identity. But the truth is, you are not defined by how fast you move or how much you can carry. You are defined by the experiences you've lived, the love you've given, the resilience you've shown. The body may falter, but the spirit, the part that laughs, remembers, comforts, and connects, that remains unshaken. And when you allow compassion to replace frustration, you begin to heal in a different way. There will still be days that test your patience, mornings when your joints ache for no reason, or afternoons when your energy disappears like fog in the sun. But those are the days that invite gentleness. You learn to take things slowly, to pause before rising, to stretch in the sunlight before stepping forward. You learn to rest without guilt, because rest is not a retreat. It's a way of protecting the strength that remains. You begin to realize that every act of care you give your body is also an act of gratitude for all it's carried you through. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to let yourself recover fully. To not rush back into chores, to not measure your worth by productivity, but to sit quietly and say, "I am still healing, and that's enough." In this stage of life, strength no longer looks like endurance, it looks like patience. It's not about proving that you can still do it all. It's about knowing when to stop, when to ask for help, when to listen to what your body is quietly trying to tell you. The truth is, after 80, the margin for error grows thinner. A missed step, a skipped glass of water, a moment of overexertion, any of these can ripple through your days. But if you approach them with awareness, you can stay one step ahead. Awareness becomes your new resilience. It gives you control not over what happens, but over how you respond to it. You learn to plan your days with flexibility, to respect your limits, and to find satisfaction not in doing more, but in doing wisely. Your body may no longer be the unstoppable force it once was, but it's still your home, the only one you've ever truly had. It's still capable of comfort, of strength, of small miracles. You just have to learn its new language. When you do, you'll find that aging doesn't mean losing control. It means learning a deeper form of harmony between mind and body. You can still walk with confidence, still move with grace, just at a slower, kinder rhythm. So when the aches appear or the fatigue sets in, remember this: your body isn't betraying you. It's reminding you that it has carried you far, and it deserves your gentleness now. Take care of it the way you've cared for everyone else. Treat it with patience, feed it with kindness, and listen closely, because even in its fragility, your body is still doing something extraordinary. It's keeping you here, giving you time, allowing you to continue the beautiful, unfinished story of your life. Sam, the feeling of disappearing, when the world stops seeing you. One of the strangest, most disorienting experiences of growing older isn't just the changes you feel in your body, it's the change in how the world responds to you. You can walk into a room full of people and notice something subtle. Conversations don't pause the way they once did. Faces glance past you more quickly. When you speak, someone might interrupt without realizing, or they'll nod politely, distracted, before moving on. It isn't cruelty or malice. It's just the quiet way that visibility begins to fade, almost like the soft dimming of a light that no one else notices but you. For much of life, you were part of the center. People turned to you for advice, for stories, for guidance. You had a role, a clear identity as a worker, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, someone who mattered in the daily choreography of life. But as the decades pass, that role starts to shift. You retire, children grow older and build their own lives. Friends who once shared your world are no longer there to echo your presence. Slowly, you begin to sense that you're still here, but less seen. You speak, and sometimes others don't quite hear. You offer a thought, and it's brushed aside as old-fashioned. You join a conversation and find yourself waiting longer for someone to turn your way. It's an experience that catches many off guard, the feeling of becoming invisible in a world that once moved around you. And it's not just about being overlooked, it's about what that invisibility means. There's a quiet grief in realizing that, to others, you may no longer represent the energy of possibility, but rather the memory of what has already been. Society, obsessed with speed and novelty, often forgets to make room for the wisdom that comes only with time. The world talks about the next generation, but rarely pauses to honor those who paved the way for it. And so, without meaning to, people look past the very ones who hold the stories, lessons, and grace that make life richer. This quiet fading of visibility can be deeply unsettling. You begin to wonder if your thoughts still matter, if your stories still have weight, if your presence still changes a room the way it once did. You may even catch yourself staying silent, thinking, no one's really listening anyway. And yet, that silence can grow heavy, because deep down, you know your voice still holds something valuable, perspective earned not through theory, but through living. You've seen the rise and fall of decades. You've endured joy and heartbreak, and you carry insights that no book or article can replicate. But here's the truth many forget. Being unseen by others does not mean you've lost your light. It simply means the world's gaze has turned elsewhere, but the glow within you remains untouched. You are still the same person who built, who cared, who shaped lives quietly and steadily for years. The world may no longer notice your presence in every room, but the people whose lives you've touched carry your influence with them every day, whether they realize it or not. Still, it's easy to internalize invisibility, to start moving more quietly, to withdraw, to stop sharing ideas or memories because you think no one cares. But that retreat only deepens the feeling of fading. The challenge in this season of life is to stay visible to yourself, even when the world forgets to look up. You don't need a stage or a spotlight. You just need presence, the decision to keep showing up, to keep speaking, to keep sharing. Every time you tell a story to a grandchild, volunteer at a local event, join a conversation, or simply smile at someone who passes by, you're reminding the world, and yourself, that you're still here, still participating, still shaping the human fabric around you. There's also a kind of quiet power in subtle visibility, in being the calm observer who listens deeply, in offering words that others might not hear right away, but remember later when they most need them. Sometimes being older means becoming the steady note beneath the noise, the grounding presence that brings perspective to a world too busy to notice its own pace. Your value doesn't fade just because fewer people acknowledge it. In many ways, it deepens, like an old song that gains new meaning when the world finally slows down enough to hear the lyrics. Still, the emotional toll of invisibility shouldn't be brushed aside. It can be painful to feel dismissed or overlooked, especially when you know how much you still have to offer. But rather than see it as rejection, try to see it as reflection, a mirror showing more about the world's blind spots than your own worth. The truth is, cultures that fail to listen to their elders are the ones that lose wisdom, not the elders themselves. When society turns away from age, it turns away from its own history. You don't need to shout to be seen. Sometimes, visibility is found in authenticity, in sharing your humor, your opinions, your reflections without apology. When you tell your stories, you're not just recalling the past, you're teaching resilience. When you share a laugh about your mistakes, you're teaching grace. When you listen to others without judgment, you're modeling compassion. These are quiet but powerful acts of visibility, the kind that ripple outward in ways that often go unseen. So, don't step back. Don't let the silence define you. Speak when you want to speak. Move when you want to move, and know that your voice still matters. The world may not always reward wisdom immediately, but it needs it desperately. You may not command attention the way you once did, but the depth you carry, the patience, the steadiness, the understanding, has never been more needed. You are not fading. You are refining. You are becoming the calm in the noise, the depth in the shallows, the story in a culture that too often forgets its storytellers. The world may rush past, eyes fixed on what's next, but when it finally pauses, as it always does, it will find that the ones who stayed quiet, who watched, who remembered, are the ones who have the most to teach. So lift your head. Meet the world's gaze, even if it flickers and drifts. You are still here. You still have things to say. And even if only one person truly hears you, that's enough. Because one heart awakened by your words, one life steadied by your kindness, is proof that you were never invisible at all. 4. When your world gets smaller, meaning must get bigger. As the years unfold past 80, life begins to shrink. Not dramatically at first, but inch by inch, almost without notice. The boundaries of your days grow smaller, the routes you travel become fewer, and the familiar world you once moved through so easily starts to feel a little farther away. The favorite restaurant you loved may have closed. The friend who used to call every week no longer can. Even the short walk to the corner feels longer than it once did. Your physical world, once wide and filled with variety, begins to narrow into something quieter, simpler, and sometimes lonelier. It's not that you stop caring or lose curiosity. It's that everything starts requiring more effort, and even small efforts begin to feel heavy. Outings that used to feel like joy can now feel like challenges. The traffic, the steps, the planning, the energy it takes to get ready. You still want to see people, to do things, but your body and your stamina often have different opinions. So you stay home more, telling yourself it's only for today. But slowly, those days stretch into a pattern, and before long, the walls around you begin to define your world more than you expected. This isn't failure, it's simply part of the rhythm of aging, the body asking for stillness while the heart still longs for movement. But when the outer world grows smaller, the inner world begins to stir. You start to notice things you didn't before, the way morning light touches the curtains, the comfort of familiar smells, the small rituals that give the day shape. You begin to understand that a quiet day can still be a full one, full of reflection, memory, and quiet gratitude. Yet, this shrinking world also carries emotional weight. There are moments when the silence feels too long, when the clock ticks too loudly, and you miss the noise of life, the sound of laughter, the sudden knock on the door, the feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. At first, the loneliness might come as a whisper, almost ignorable. But over time, it can grow louder, not in sound, but in presence. You might find yourself pausing in the middle of the day, realizing you haven't spoken to anyone yet. Even for those who have always valued independence, there's a kind of ache in that realization, a quiet grief for the social rhythms that once gave life its pulse. It's not weakness to feel this way. It's simply what happens when the outer life quiets and the echoes of the past grow stronger than the noises of the present. And yet, within this narrowing lies a hidden opportunity to redefine what fullness means. Life doesn't need to be large to be meaningful. A smaller world can still hold enormous depth if you let your sense of meaning grow to fill the space. When the external world offers less stimulation, you start to notice the beauty in small things again. You rediscover the pleasure of a good meal, the comfort of a morning routine, the warmth of a single, sincere conversation. You realize that connection doesn't always need to be grand or frequent to be real. Even a letter, a message, a shared smile at the grocery store can brighten your day in unexpected ways. The key lies in choosing engagement, even if it's in small doses. A short walk to the end of the street can feel like a journey. A conversation with a neighbor can feel like an event. Reading a good book, watching the sunset, or tending to a plant can become sacred rituals that bring texture to quiet days. Each small act of presence becomes a thread that keeps you woven into life's fabric. You may not travel far anymore, but you can still move deeply, into reflection, into memory, into gratitude. These inner travels can be just as rich as the outer ones once were. It also helps to keep curiosity alive. The world is still out there, even if you experience it differently now. Technology can bridge distance, a video call, a new hobby shared online, a YouTube channel that teaches something you never tried before. Maybe you join a virtual group of readers or gardeners or storytellers. Maybe you start writing down your own stories, not to be published, but to pass along to those who will come after you. You may find that your smaller world is not a limitation, but an invitation. To deepen instead of widen, to go inward instead of outward, to rediscover the meaning in what remains. There's also beauty in accepting that the shape of life changes, and that this change doesn't have to mean loss of joy. You can grieve what's gone, the places, the people, the mobility, the ease, while still creating joy in what's left. The two can coexist. Many find that once they stop fighting the smallness of life and start embracing it, peace begins to grow. The stillness that once felt like isolation starts to feel like rest. The days that once felt empty start to feel spacious, full of small, precious details that busyness used to hide. You might even find that the smaller your world becomes, the more you appreciate the things you once overlooked. The way a familiar object holds a lifetime of memories, the way the light changes in your room through the hours, the way your favorite cup of tea feels like a quiet companion. The world hasn't taken meaning from you. It's simply given you a chance to see meaning differently, not in the rush of doing, but in the art of being. And perhaps the most beautiful truth is this: when life slows down, your presence itself becomes a gift. People who come to visit you often find a calm they don't find anywhere else. You teach them, without trying, what it means to savor, to listen, to notice. In your stillness, others learn how to breathe again. In your patience, they learn gentleness. In your quiet reflections, they find perspective. The world outside may move too fast to notice, but you've become a kind of sanctuary, a steady light that still warms those lucky enough to draw near. So yes, the world may grow smaller after 80. Your outings may lessen, your circles may tighten, your pace may slow, but none of that means your life has lost depth or beauty. Meaning doesn't fade when activity fades. It grows stronger when you learn to hold it closer. You may no longer roam wide, but you can still travel far, through memory, through connection, through moments of quiet gratitude that hold entire worlds within them. When your world gets smaller, let your heart get bigger. Let your curiosity stretch, your kindness deepen, your patience expand. Because in the end, a small life lived with meaning is not small at all. It's vast in ways that only the soul can measure. 5. Learning to trust your body again, even when it feels unreliable. There's a quiet kind of betrayal that comes with age, not from anyone around you, but from your own body. You wake up one morning feeling steady, clear, full of life, ready to take on the day. You move easily, you think sharply, you feel like yourself again. And then, the next morning, it's as if someone changed the rules overnight. Your knees ache, your balance feels off, your thoughts come slower, or your hands tremble for no clear reason. You search for logic, for something to blame. The weather, your sleep, maybe the meal you skipped, but often there's no explanation. Your body simply has its own moods now, and you are left to adjust, to negotiate, to adapt. It can be disorienting, even frightening, when the thing that has carried you through every moment of your life begins to feel unpredictable. You've relied on this body for decades. It's walked through work, love, loss, and celebration. It's climbed stairs, rocked babies, cooked meals, comforted friends, and now it seems to have grown temperamental, sending you signals that change from day to day. One morning, you can walk to the garden without effort. The next, the same few steps feel like a mountain. You drop a glass and wonder when your grip became less sure. You bend down and take longer than you expect to stand again. These aren't just inconveniences. They're reminders that you no longer live in the body you once knew so well. At first, this unpredictability breeds doubt. You begin to second-guess yourself before standing, before walking, before reaching. You hesitate at curbs, hold onto railings you once ignored, plan outings with quiet worry instead of excitement. That hesitation can grow into a kind of fear, not just of falling or hurting yourself, but of losing the sense of control that once made you feel safe in your own skin. And that fear can start to shrink your world even further, making you avoid things you once enjoyed simply because you're unsure of what your body might do next. But the truth is, this unpredictability is not a sign that your body has abandoned you. It's a sign that it's communicating differently now. It still wants to protect you, still wants to serve you, but it's asking for cooperation, not command. You can't push it the way you used to. Now you have to listen. And when you start to listen, really listen, you begin to build a new kind of relationship with your body. One built on patience, awareness, and compassion instead of frustration. The key is to shift from control to partnership. When you stop fighting your body and start working with it, something changes inside you. You begin to sense the small cues it gives, the subtle signs of fatigue, the quiet request for rest, the gentle warning to slow down. These are not weaknesses, they're your body's way of keeping you safe. You learn that rest isn't laziness, it's part of the rhythm of strength. You learn that slowing down doesn't mean stopping, it means moving more wisely. You begin to trade pride for presence, replacing the old drive to push through it with a quieter wisdom that says, I'll do what I can, and that's enough. Of course, there will still be moments of frustration, days when you feel trapped inside a body that no longer feels familiar, times when you miss the simple ease of standing up without thinking or climbing stairs without pause. Those moments will sting. And it's okay to grieve them. It's okay to sigh, to feel tired, to wish for the freedom you once had. But try not to let that grief turn into resentment. Your body has never stopped serving you. Even now, even with its new limitations, it's still working, breathing, mending, balancing, carrying you as best it can. It may be slower, but it's still loyal. It still wakes up every morning and gives you another day. There's also something quietly empowering about learning your body's new language. You start to plan better. You stretch before moving. You keep water nearby. You build routines that protect your energy instead of draining it. You learn what foods, movements, and rest patterns make you feel stronger. You learn to respect the days when your body says no, and to celebrate the days when it surprises you with a yes. Every adjustment becomes a small victory. Every act of self-care, a quiet declaration of strength. And through this process, something remarkable happens. Trust begins to rebuild. It's a different kind of trust than the one you had before. When you were younger, trust came easily. You didn't even think about it. Now, it's deliberate. It's earned day by day, moment by moment. You learn that even when your body falters, you can adapt. You can steady yourself, recover, rest. Try again. Flexibility becomes your new strength, and patience becomes your greatest ally. There's also the emotional side of this healing, the need to forgive your body. We don't talk about that often, but it matters. Forgiving your body means letting go of the expectation that it will always perform the way it once did. It means allowing it to be imperfect, to falter, to age, without seeing that as failure. When you stop resenting your body for aging and start appreciating it for enduring, the relationship softens. You begin to see it not as an enemy, but as a lifelong companion doing its best under new conditions. And in that acceptance, something beautiful emerges: gratitude. You realize that even with its aches and stumbles, your body still gives you the gift of another sunrise, another conversation, another laugh. You can still feel warmth, still taste sweetness, still hear music, still reach out to comfort someone. It may take more effort now, but that effort makes every sensation richer, every simple act more meaningful. You stop taking movement for granted because you know what it costs, and that makes every step feel like grace. So yes, your body may no longer be predictable. It may test you, frustrate you, and humble you in ways you never expected. But it's also teaching you something profound: that strength is not the absence of weakness, but the willingness to keep showing up despite it. That beauty isn't youth, but endurance. That trust isn't automatic, but built from patience and kindness, moment by moment. Your body has been your home since the beginning, through joy and illness, work and rest, laughter and loss. It has carried you faithfully through it all. And now, as it slows, it's simply asking for what it's always given: care, respect, and love. If you can give it that, if you can meet its uncertainty with compassion, you'll find that your body, even now, is still trustworthy. It may not always be steady, but it's still yours. It's still strong enough to carry your story forward, one slow, beautiful, intentional step at a time. 6. Turning harsh realities into gentle truths. When you reach a certain point in life, somewhere past the noise, the striving, the endless need to prove, you begin to see things differently. The harsh realities that once felt like losses start to soften. They don't disappear, but they lose their sharp edges. You begin to understand that aging, with all its discomforts and changes, isn't a punishment. It's a teacher, patient, persistent, and sometimes painfully honest. The shrinking world of connection, the slower body, the fading visibility, the smaller daily life, the unpredictability, all of these can feel like waves that pull you under. But when you stop fighting them, when you let yourself float for a moment, you realize that those same waves are carrying you somewhere quieter, deeper, more peaceful than before. Aging strips away many things: noise, vanity, excess. But what remains is essence. What remains is you, distilled down to truth. For many, the greatest revelation of these later years is that strength no longer means resistance. It means surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of opening up. You begin to accept what is, instead of mourning what was. And that acceptance, rather than shrinking your life, begins to expand it again from the inside out. You stop wasting energy on fighting the unchangeable, and instead, you use that energy to nurture what still matters: love, peace, kindness, memory, and presence. You also begin to see the beauty in honesty, in naming what's hard, instead of pretending it's not. There's dignity in saying, yes, this is difficult, without shame. There's courage in admitting, I get lonely sometimes, or my body isn't what it used to be, without bitterness. When you speak the truth, you not only lighten your own heart, you give others permission to be real too. That's a rare gift in a world still afraid of age, still clinging to the illusion of endless youth. By living your truth openly, you become a mirror for others, showing that there's another way to live, one rooted not in denial, but in grace. Perhaps the most profound transformation that happens at this stage is how your sense of time changes. You no longer chase it. You begin to live within it. The urgency fades, replaced by a softer rhythm, one that values moments over milestones. You realize that happiness was never about having more time, but about noticing the time you have. You savor a slow morning coffee, a quiet conversation, a nap in a sunlit chair. You see beauty in what once seemed ordinary, and meaning in what others rush past. And with that awareness comes peace, the kind that isn't loud or triumphant, but steady, like a heartbeat. You start forgiving more easily, yourself first, and then others. You stop holding grudges, not because the hurt didn't matter, but because carrying it costs too much energy now. You learn that forgiveness is freedom. It doesn't change the past, but it changes the weight you carry into the present. You learn to travel lighter, to let small irritations go, to choose comfort over control. The truth is, every stage of life asks something new of us. Childhood asks us to learn. Adulthood asks us to build. But later life, these years after 80, ask us to release, to loosen the grip on what's gone and make space for what still wants to bloom. There is wisdom in release. When you let go of the fight against aging, you start to discover the gifts it's been offering all along. Perspective, clarity, the ability to separate what matters from what never did. And so, what once felt harsh becomes gentle. The shrinking of your world becomes simplification. The slower pace becomes peace. The body's changes become reminders of care. The fading of visibility becomes freedom from pretense. What looked like endings begin to reveal themselves as transformations, doorways to a new kind of wholeness. In the quiet of these later years, you start to realize that life hasn't taken from you nearly as much as it's given. It has given you stories, 1,000 moments that no one else has lived exactly the way you have. It has given you scars that prove endurance, laughter that still echoes, love that refuses to fade. And it's giving you, right now, the chance to see it all, to look back with open eyes and say, yes, it was imperfect, but it was mine. And perhaps that's the gentlest truth of all. You don't have to be unbreakable to be strong. You don't have to be busy to be worthy. You don't have to be seen to have mattered. The real beauty of this chapter lies in simply being, in breathing, remembering, forgiving, and noticing. The world may have grown quieter, but you have not disappeared into it. You've become part of it, steady, wise, and beautifully human. Finally, growing older is not the end of the story. Life after 80 can surprise you, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it asks you to live differently. It asks for patience where there used to be urgency, gentleness where there used to be strength, acceptance where there once was striving. And yet, when you stop fighting what's changing and start listening to it, you begin to see that growing older isn't about losing your story. It's about rewriting it with deeper ink. You've lived through so many versions of yourself: the dreamer, the worker, the caregiver, the one who built, who loved, who lost, who started again. And now, in this quieter chapter, you have the rare gift of seeing it all, of looking back not with regret, but with perspective. Every decision, every mistake, every victory, every sorrow has shaped you into the person you are today. You've earned the right to rest. You've earned the right to slow down, but you've also earned the right to still dream, to still grow, to still give what only you can: your wisdom, your warmth, your presence. The truth is, growing older doesn't mean your world has stopped expanding. It simply expands in different directions now. It grows inward, into reflection, gratitude, and tenderness. It grows through others, in the lives you've touched and continue to touch in ways you may never fully realize. Your words, your kindness, your humor, your resilience, they ripple outward far beyond what you can see. You may not always be in the spotlight anymore, but you are still lighting the room, sometimes softly, sometimes silently, but always with purpose. These years are not the epilogue. They are a quieter chapter that still belongs to the same story, the one that began decades ago when you first started learning how to live. They are the chapter where the lessons finally come into focus, where life asks less of your body and more of your heart. It's the time when presence matters more than speed, and gratitude matters more than gain. It's when you realize that your worth has never depended on how much you can do, but on how deeply you can be. So, take a moment, today, this hour, this breath, and see yourself as you truly are. Not as the world sometimes forgets to see you, but as the full, rich, extraordinary person you have become. The one who has endured, adapted, loved, lost, and continued anyway. The one who still laughs, still cares, still feels, still matters. The story isn't over, it's simply quieter now, but no less profound. Every sunrise you greet, every kind word you speak, every small joy you notice adds another line to it. Life, even at 80 and beyond, still offers moments of beauty waiting to be noticed, still gives you chances to love, to forgive, to smile, to begin again in small, tender ways. You have not faded. You have refined. You have not been left behind. You have become the keeper of time. And the world, whether it knows it or not, is gentler because you are still here.